Hi everyone, I welcome you all once again to Civics video class. In the last video, you have learnt about the undemocratic policies and rule in countries like Mexico, Saudi Arabia, China, Estonia, Zimbabwe, Fiji, etc. Now today, under the same heading, what is democracy? Why democracy? Under this heading, we are going to learn today about the arguments in favor of democracy and argument against democracy. So these two things in this video you are going to learn. Okay, children, let us discuss under the title, what is democracy? Why democracy? Why democracy? Now, let me tell you about the arguments against democracy, right? Arguments against democracy, that means demerits of democracy. Change of leaders leads to instability in democracy. Already in the first video, I have made known to you what is democracy. Democracy is a people's government. Democracy is run by the people. Representatives are elected by the people, and these representatives rule over the people. So ultimately, the ultimate authority or the power vested in the hands of the people in democracy. So power does not come from a royal line, it does not come from kings, but power comes only from people in democracy. Those things you have learned in the previous videos under the same title. And now let me tell you about the arguments against democracy. Dear children, here change of leaders leads to instability in democracy. Generally, in democracy, governments generally keep on changing every 5 years. Every 5 years, governments keep on changing. Due to this frequent change of the governments, sometimes leads to instability. It is true, because sometimes when no political party gets absolute majority in democracy, that certainly creates political chaotic conditions, political disorder sometimes in a country. So this frequent change of government or frequent change of leaders ultimately leads to instability. Okay, instability, it leads to instability. We cannot see stable government sometimes when political chaotic conditions prevails. Then ultimately we cannot see a stable governments in democracy. So this is one of the demerits of democracy, we can say, my dear. So change of leaders leads to instability in democracy. And secondly, democracy is all about political competition and power play, and there is no scope for morality. And we all know that democracy is all about political competition. Yes, this political competition ultimately leads to so many unhealthy, what we call, things in the society. So democracy is all about political competition and power play. So already the rulers in democracy tries to come to power. They wanted to capture power. They wanted to grab the political power. For this very reason, they don't hesitate to follow unfair methods, particularly in elections. So ultimately here, democracy is all about political competition and power play. Yes, my dear. So in democracy, the rulers or the people, the aspirants want to come to power. For this very reason, they follow all the cheap tricks and they follow all the unfair methods in democracy. As a result, what happens? We cannot see any kind of morality. There is no scope for morality. So the leaders follow immoral practices, unfair methods. That's why there is no scope for morality in democracy. So, yes. So, immorality is generally found in democracy. There is no scope at all for morality. So, democracy is all about political competition and power play, and that is why when these conditions prevail, we cannot see any kind of morality. Yes, there is no scope for moral values in democratic politics, my dear children. So that is also one of the demerits of democracy. And thirdly, so many people have to be consulted in democracy, and this also leads to delays. Yes, in democracy, it is known for discussions and debates. Democracy is known for discussions and debates. So many people have to be consulted before taking any decisions, or before taking for any kind of change. Generally, the rulers consult so many people. When they consult all these people, ultimately that leads to delays. Yes, it leads to unnecessary delays. So many people have to be consulted in democracy because it is a people's government. After all, democracy is a people's government. That is why so many people have to be consulted before taking a final decision. So whenever the people have been consulted, a large number of people have been consulted, ultimately this leads to a kind of a delay in administration. So it is also one of the demerits of democracy. A lot of people have to be consulted, yes, before bring about a change. That is why sometimes it leads to delay. Yes, that is also one of the demerits of democracy. And then elected leaders do not always know the best interests of the people, which leads to bad decision. All our elected leaders do not always know the best interests of the people. Sometimes the rulers also go against the interests of the people. Sometimes the rulers in democracy go against the wishes of the people. They go against the will of the people. So we cannot expect these leaders that they think in terms of the people's welfare. Sometimes these elected leaders do not always know the best interests of the people. They ignore sometimes the interests of the people. They always know the best interests of the people, even though it is a democratic government. They do not always know the best interests of the people. Sometimes they go against the interests of the people. Sometimes they go against the will of the people. So whenever they go against the interests of the people, ultimately the democracy becomes a big mockery. Ultimately, the fruits of democracy may not reach the people. So that is why, my dear children, elected leaders do not always know the best interests of the people, which leads to bad decisions. Sometimes the elected rulers take bad decisions when they think in terms of the when they go against the wishes of the people. Ultimately, the bad decisions, the bad laws will come into force when they take the bad decisions. So that is not at all good for a democracy. So elected leaders do not always know the best interests of the people, which leads to bad decisions, my dear children. And later, democracy leads to corruption, as it is based on electoral competition. Just before I told you, democracy is nothing but elections. Yes, democracy stands for elections only. That's why democracy leads to corruption, as it is based upon electoral competition. Yes, for every 5 years generally in a democracy, where we can see the elections. So elections are held for every 5 years. So that is why the rulers or the leaders wanted to grab the power, yes, by following different unfair methods. So it has become an electoral competition. Yes, democracy has become an electoral competition. Particularly, democracy is based upon electoral competition. So that is why, because of this electoral competition, this leads to so many undemocratic ways, okay, in democracy. And this leads to particularly corruption. So we can see high amount of corruption in democratic countries sometimes, because it is based upon electoral competition. So when it is based upon electoral competition, so the leaders by all means wanted to come to power. Yes, that is why sometimes they do not hesitate to follow rigging, and sometimes, okay, and capturing of polling booths, and all these they resort to all these unfair methods in elections. So when they go, okay, with these systems, then ultimately democracy leads to corruption. When they follow these unfair methods, ultimately it leads to democracy, leads to corruption, my dear children. When the corruption grows in a democracy, then the fruits of democracy will not reach the common people. Yes, because you know very well, democracy is considered as the best form of government in the world. But whenever it becomes corrupt, whenever democracy becomes corrupt, ultimately, okay, the fruits of the democracy will not reach the common people. So democracy leads to corruption as it is based on electoral competition, particularly the elections, okay, yes, bring a lot of unfair things, okay. Yes, democracy leads to corruption as it is based on electoral competition. This is also one of the demerits of democracy. And later, ordinary people don't know what is good for them. Ordinary people, particularly who are ordinary people, the illiterates especially. In democracy we see, okay, a large number of illiterates. Yeah, yes, a large number of illiterates are there in democracy, in democratic countries. There is no proper education for them. So that is why here ordinary people, okay, and then common people, illiterate people, indolent people, ignorant people do not know the value of what we call right to vote. They do not know the value of right to vote, and sometimes they do not know what is good for them. They don't know whom to elect in the elections. They don't know whom to exercise their right to vote. Such people are there because ignorant, indolent people are there in democracy. So when these people are there, ultimately democracy virtually fails in such conditions. That is why, my dear children, here ordinary people do not know what is good for them. What is good for them? Whoever offers money, simply they just taking the money, they exercise their vote. So when these conditions prevail, ultimately democracy fails. Yes, virtually it fails. So ordinary people don't know what is good for them. They should not decide anything. Yes, they can't decide. Yes. That is why this is also one of the corruption. Particularly ordinary people do not know what is good for them. Especially if there are more number of illiterates in democracy, democracy fails ultimately, my dear children. That's why political awareness yes, should be brought among the indolent people in democracy. Then only democracy will be successful. Okay. And then democracy is not a magical solution for all problems. Okay, don't think that democracy is the only solution for all the problems. It is a miss or a wrong conception. Yes, democracy alone can't bring solution for all kinds of problems. It is a wrong notion, my dear. Democracy is not at all a magical solution for all problems. So people must be aware of their rights. People must know the values of democracy, and especially the leaders must be upright. Yes, they must be upright and sincere. Then only, okay, the result or the fruits of democracy will reach the people. So all these come under arguments against democracy, my dear children. And okay, children. So all these are the arguments that stand against democracy. These are all the demerits of democracy, or arguments against democracy. Okay, and now let us discuss the merits or arguments in favor of democracy. Let us discuss about the arguments in favor of democracy now. Okay, Democracy is accountable to people. Dear children, in the beginning I told you, democracy stands for people. Already you know very well about the prominent definition of prominent definition given by Abraham Lincoln. It is the government of the people, for the people, and by the people. Yes, it is true, because a democracy stands for people only. Ultimately, when the power is vested in the hands of the people, ultimately democracy is accountable to people only. Why they are accountable to people? Because after all, the rulers are elected by the people only. After all, the leaders come to power because of the people only. That is why, my dear children, democracy is accountable. Democracies, our rulers are accountable to the people only. Since the rulers are elected by the people, in turn, the rulers are ultimately responsible or accountable or answerable. Accountable means answerable. Here the rulers are ultimately answerable, or democratic government is answerable to people. Whatever they do, whatever they bring, but they must be answerable. The rulers must be answerable, or they must be accountable to people. After all, these are elected by the people, or the democracy is established by the people only. Because we know very well, people play a significant role in democracy. They play a vital role. People play a vital role in democracy. After all, democracy revolves around the people only. It is a people's government. As you know, it is a people's government. That is why democracy is ultimately accountable to people only. Yes, democracy is accountable to people. So rulers have to answerable. Yes, they must be answerable to people only. They are accountable to people only. But in other forms of governments, whereas in dictatorship or in monarchy, where you cannot see this kind of accountability, so accountability is not present in aristocracy or monarchy or dictatorship. Only you can see this kind of system or accountability is found only in democracy, where democracy is ultimately accountable to people only. They are answerable to people only. Since they are elected by the people, they are answerable to people only. And then second one, that is, it enhances the dignity of citizens. It enhances the dignity of citizens. Another merit, that is, that means democracy enhances the dignity of citizens. It is true, my dear children. In other forms of government, citizens are not called so. And in monarchy, citizens are called subjects, subjects. So they are called subject not as citizens. But citizen is, the word citizen has a dignity, yes, respect. This word has some respect. But whereas in other forms of government, where the people are ignored, they are not taken into consideration. The people interests are ignored. They are neglected at all. Yes, they are totally neglected. But my dear children, in democracy, where we can see here, democracy enhances the dignity of citizens. It enhances, it respects the citizens, it enhances, it develops the dignity of citizens. No doubt it, because the people here are considered to be the citizens. The word citizen has some respect. Yes, because democracy depends upon the citizens. That is why here democracy enhances the dignity of citizens. That is also one of the important merit. And then the third one, elections are held at regular intervals and free and fair. Yes, they are free and fair. Elections are held at regular intervals. We know very well. In democratic countries, generally, for every 5 years, elections are held. Take for instance India. In our country, for every 5 years, elections are held. So here the elections are conducted or organized or held in a fair and free manner. In a free and fair manner, elections are conducted. Already in the last videos you might have had, you have already had in case of for example Mexico, where Elections are held, but a single party always, comes to power. That shows that it's not a fair election. But whereas, take for instance in India, here we can see the elections are conducted on free and fair way. So elections are conducted in a free and fair manner. So elections are held at regular intervals, free and fair manner. The elections are conducted. Next one, that is also one of the important features or merits of democracy. And then freedom of speech and expression, my dear. Here the citizens are given freedom of speech and expression. But in other forms of governments where you cannot see the freedom of speech and expression for the children, for the citizens, but whereas here in democracy, where you can see the speech, freedom of speech and expression, and not only that, freedom of thought is also a feature of democracy. So that is why in democracy, where people enjoy the freedom of speech and expression. Besides this, they also enjoy the freedom of thought, and this is also one of the important feature or merits of one of the merits of democracy, freedom of speech and expression, my dear children. This is also one of the important merits of democracy. In other forms of governments where we cannot see the freedom of speech or expression, only in democracy people are given freedom of speech and expression. But in dictatorship, if the people express their opinion openly, then they will be put in jail. Yes, and they will be persecuted by the rulers. But whereas in democracy, where people can freely express their opinions, people can freely express their thoughts, that is the merit of democracy. And next one, a right to vote acts as a check on the government. A right to vote acts as a check on the government. Yes, my dear children. Every 5 years, generally in a democracy, elections are held. That is why for every 5 years, the government keeps on changing. The government changes after every 5 years. So that is why in a democracy, nobody is a permanent winner and no one is a permanent loser. Yes, my dear. Yes, in democracy, no one is a permanent winner and no one is a permanent loser, because they keep on changing. Yes, the rulers comes to power and another rulers come. They might come and go. They are not permanent. They are not. But democracy is permanent. But rulers are not permanent. Governments are not permanent. So that is why here a right to act, which is being enjoyed by the people, acts as a check of the government. It acts as a check on the government. And unfaithful leaders can be curbed on in elections. Unfaithful leaders can be curbed in elections. That is why people can utilize their right to vote and they can select the best ones in every election. That is why it acts as a check on the government. Right to vote acts as a check on the government. And then unfaithful leaders can be curbed in elections. Unfaithful, insincere, incapable, inefficient leaders can be curbed, can be checked only in elections. Generally people elect sincere rulers. They needed sincere leaders. That is why they vote for sincere leaders only. So therefore unfaithful leaders can be curbed in elections. Unfaithful leader, insincere leaders can be curbed in the elections, my dear. So that is also one of the merits of democracy. And next one, impartial judiciary. Impartial judiciary. Impartial judiciary. Yes, we know very well, my dear children. Judiciary is impartial in a democracy where judiciary does not bow down to any leaders, but it acts as impartial. So Supreme Court safeguards the rights of the people, because Supreme Court acts as a custodian. It acts as a guardian of the rights of the people. So that is why impartial judiciary is found in democracy only. So Supreme Court safeguards the freedoms of the people against all types of arbitrary rule of the government. And lastly, courts function as a custodian of rights, my dear children. Courts function as a custodian of rights. So my dear children, all these come under the arguments in favor of democracy. See, look at the Supreme Court here. Take a look at the picture of Supreme Court here, and it is the custodian of the rights of the citizens in the country. Okay, yes, it acts as impartially. It acts impartially. Okay, yes, it is an independent one. And look at this, the right to vote. Okay, yes, in a democracy, right to vote plays a very important role. Okay, people elect their representative by means of right to vote. Okay, my dear children, so this is all about, okay, arguments, all about the arguments in favor of democracy and arguments in against democracy. Okay, all these things you have learned. That means you have learned today in this video merits and demerits of democracy, and in the next video I shall tell you the broader meaning of democracy. With that, that would be completed in the next video, and till then keep watching. Okay, if you have any doubts, okay, call upon me. Thank you, my dear children, for watching this video. Thank you. Bye.